Students at Lincoln Academy buzzed with excitement. The news had spread all week that the classroom would finally get a pet. Alex leaned over to Mia and whispered, "I hope it's something small and cute, like a hamster or a bunny." Mia nodded, her eyes sparkling with imagination. They both pictured tiny paws, soft fur, and playful antics. In the classroom, everyone talked about what they wanted the pet to be. Some guessed a turtle or a small lizard. Others imagined a colorful bird that could sing. Laughter and cheerful voices filled the room. Even shy students, like Ethan, peeked over their desks to join the conversation. Mr. Collins, the teacher, walked in and smiled at the students' excitement. "Remember," he said, "a pet is a big responsibility. You must treat it kindly and take care of it every day." His voice was gentle but firm. Alex felt a pang of nervousness. He wanted to be ready for whatever pet they would get. Outside, the hallways were quiet, but everyone knew a special visitor was coming today. Rumors had spread that a human from the city would bring the pet. Some students whispered about exotic animals, imagining possibilities from ordinary pets to something extraordinary. Liam, always the curious one, raised his hand and asked, "Do you think it will be dangerous?" The class laughed, thinking he was joking, but a tiny shiver of anticipation ran through the room. Mia could hardly sit still. She drew little sketches of what the pet might look like, adding tiny wings and fur. Alex tried to imagine it too, but he kept coming back to a simple, harmless animal. "It has to be cute," he whispered to himself. He didn't like the idea of anything scary. As the morning bell rang, the students filed into the classroom. Sunlight poured through the windows, lighting up the room. The air smelled faintly of chalk and books, but also carried the thrill of surprise. Mr. Collins opened the door and called, "Everyone, please take your seats. Our guest will be here any moment." The students hurried to their desks. Even quiet Emma, who usually kept to herself, peeked over the top of her notebook. Jack Harris, the human visitor, entered with a large container covered by a tarp. The container looked heavy and sturdy. Jack smiled warmly, but his eyes held something that made a few students stop and stare. Alex felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Mia leaned forward, whispering, "Do you think it's a hamster?" Jack crouched down to the student's level and said, "I brought something very special for your class today. Something you will never forget." His voice was calm and confident, but it carried weight. The students exchanged puzzled glances. Even Liam, who had joked about danger, felt a knot of curiosity in his stomach. Ethan raised an eyebrow, and Sophie's eyes widened. What could be inside that container? Mr. Collins gestured for the students to stay calm. "Remember to be respectful. This is a new experience for all of us," he said. Jack began to pull back the tarp slowly. The room went silent, and even the usual chatter of students faded. They all leaned forward, eyes fixed on the container. Alex's heart beat faster. Mia's hands were clasped tightly together. He could see the container move slightly, almost as if whatever was inside was aware of them. Students whispered among themselves. "Maybe it's a cat," Emma guessed. "No, maybe a tiny dog," Liam said. The guesses bounced around the room, each one more hopeful and harmless than the last. Jack spoke again. "This is a creature that will teach you about respect, courage, and responsibility. Pay attention, and you will understand it better." He lifted the tarp fully, revealing the pet inside. Gasps filled the room. The creature was nothing like they expected. It was large, its eyes glowing with intelligence, and its movements were powerful yet graceful. Alex and Mia froze, staring at the massive apex predator before them. The classroom had imagined something small and cute. Instead, they saw a being that radiated strength and presence. Mr. Collins took a deep breath, and even he seemed impressed. Jack knelt beside the creature and said, "Meet Raxor. He will be part of your class. Treat him with care, and he will be your friend." Alex's mouth went dry. Mia stepped back but didn't look away. The other students were a mix of fear and awe. They had come expecting a simple, harmless animal. Instead, they were faced with something extraordinary, something that would change the way they saw humans and the power of trust. The first moments with Raxor were quiet, filled with suspense and wonder. They knew their lives in the classroom would never be the same again. The students were still staring at Raxor, the apex predator, trying to process what they were seeing. Alex blinked several times, as if looking away might make it disappear. Mia took a small step forward, curiosity overcoming her fear. "Is it dangerous?" she whispered to Jack. He shook his head calmly. "Not if you treat him with respect. Raxor is intelligent and understands boundaries." The creature shifted its massive body slightly, eyes following every movement in the room. Its scales glistened in the sunlight, and the subtle click of its claws on the floor echoed through the classroom. Even Mr. Collins felt the weight of its presence. He reminded the students to be calm and to pay attention. Jack began to explain how Raxor could communicate. It did not speak like humans, but it used gestures, movements, and expressions. He demonstrated by pointing to a small ball. Raxor nudged it gently with its snout, then looked at the students as if inviting them to try. Mia, trembling slightly, rolled the ball toward it. Raxor nudged it back, slower this time, as if teaching patience. Liam leaned closer to Alex and whispered, "I thought we'd get a hamster. How are we supposed to take care of something this big?" Alex shook his head, still staring at Raxor. "We'll figure it out," he muttered. Inside, however, he felt the same mixture of fear and excitement everyone else did. Jack set rules for interacting with Raxor. No sudden movements. No loud noises. Always respect its space. Raxor responded immediately to his instructions, crouching slightly and tilting its head. The students watched in awe, realizing that this was more than just a pet. It was a creature that could think, learn, and bond with them. Ethan, the quiet student, raised his hand. "Can we feed it?" Jack smiled. "Yes, but only what I provide. Raxor has a special diet. You will learn to take care of him properly." He reached into a bag and brought out a small piece of specially prepared food. Raxor sniffed it, then ate gently. The students clapped quietly, amazed at the controlled grace of the predator. Sophie and Mia cautiously approached, one after the other, to touch Raxor's head. Its scales were firm but surprisingly warm. It lowered its massive head to meet them, and for a brief moment, the room felt almost peaceful. Even the students who were scared began to smile, realizing that this dangerous-looking creature could also be gentle. Throughout the day, Jack guided the students on how to interact safely. They learned to watch Raxor's body language, to anticipate its movements, and to understand its signals. What had started as fear slowly transformed into fascination. The classroom, which had expected a small, harmless animal, now held a living example of extraordinary human ingenuity and care. By the end of the session, the students were tired but exhilarated. They had learned that a true pet could be more than just cute. It could be intelligent, powerful, and capable of teaching lessons beyond what any ordinary animal could. Alex, Mia, and the others left the classroom with new respect for humans and the remarkable creatures they could introduce into the world. Jack slowly pulled back the tarp further to reveal more of Raxor's massive body. The students' mouths fell open. Its powerful limbs and long tail stretched across the container, each movement deliberate and strong. Even the smallest detail, like the ridges along its back, shone in the classroom lights. Alex took a step back, gripping his desk for support. Mia leaned forward, curiosity battling fear. Raxor lifted its head and gave a low rumble, a sound that resonated in the chest. The room went quiet, the kind of silence that makes everyone hold their breath. Jack knelt next to the creature, signaling the students to stay calm. Jack explained that Raxor was not just any predator. It was an apex predator, one of the smartest of its species. "He can understand your intentions," Jack said. "He knows when you are kind, when you are scared, and when you mean harm. Treat him well, and he will respond positively." Some students, like Liam and Ethan, whispered nervously. "Is it going to attack us?" Liam asked. Jack shook his head. "No, he won't attack unless threatened. Watch him carefully and move slowly. Observe first. Learn his behavior. Mia gathered courage and held out her hand. Raxor lowered its massive head and sniffed her fingers. The students gasped. Alex noticed that Raxor's eyes were intelligent, almost human-like in their understanding. Sophie, who had been hesitant, inched closer to touch its scales. The predator didn't flinch. Instead, it tilted its head and blinked slowly, signaling trust. Jack demonstrated how to teach simple gestures to Raxor. He used a small ball and instructed the students to roll it gently. Raxor nudged it back each time, its movements precise and careful. The students watched in awe, realizing that this creature was not only powerful, but also capable of learning and adapting. Throughout the period, Raxor moved gracefully within the classroom space, testing boundaries but never breaking rules. Its tail swished slowly, eyes scanning, and claws tapping softly on the floor. Mr. Collins reminded everyone to respect its presence and to remain calm. The students nodded, some still nervous, others completely fascinated. Alex and Mia observed each other, silently agreeing that this was more than a pet. It was a lesson in patience, courage, and understanding. Raxor's intelligence shone through every action, every movement, teaching the students that extraordinary beings could exist, even in familiar spaces like a classroom. By the end of the session, the students had learned to coexist with Raxor in the room, gaining both admiration and a hint of fear. The experience left a lasting impression. They knew that humans could handle creatures far beyond ordinary imagination, and that the bonds formed could transcend fear and uncertainty. After the initial surprise, Jack began teaching the students how to understand Raxor better. He explained that Raxor could communicate using gestures and body language. Every flick of the tail, movement of the head, and position of its limbs carried meaning. The students listened closely, eager to learn. Mia watched as Jack demonstrated a simple signal. He raised his hand slowly, and Raxor lowered its head in response. "He understands intention," Jack explained. "If you act calmly and respectfully, he will respond in kind." Alex tried the gesture next, slightly nervous. Raxor tilted its massive head and gave a small nod. The students gasped quietly. Liam whispered, "It's like he understands us." Jack smiled. "Exactly. Treat him as intelligent, not just strong." Jack then explained the importance of personal space. Raxor was powerful, and it could easily knock over desks or hurt someone accidentally if startled. The students practiced moving slowly, approaching only when invited. They learned to watch Raxor's eyes and tail for cues. Sophie tentatively reached out her hand to touch Raxor's scaled shoulder. The creature leaned into her hand gently, making her smile. Mia followed, stroking its head carefully. The students were amazed by the contrast between its fierce appearance and gentle actions. Jack brought out a small ball and demonstrated how to play safely with Raxor. The predator nudged the ball back with its snout, careful and precise. The students began taking turns, learning to interact with balance, patience, and respect. Throughout the session, the classroom became a place of discovery. What had begun as fear gradually transformed into fascination. Alex, Mia, Liam, and the others started understanding that Raxor was more than a pet. He was a teacher, showing them lessons about courage, empathy, and observation. By the end of the day, the students had gained their first real sense of connection with Raxor. Even those who had been scared at first, like Ethan, felt a growing respect. The classroom, once ordinary and predictable, had become a place of wonder, where human skill and intelligence brought an extraordinary creature into their lives. The next day, the students returned to the classroom eager to spend more time with Raxor. Alex and Mia were excited but cautious. They remembered Jack's instructions about patience and observation. As the students approached, Raxor rose slightly, moving around the room. Its large claws tapped softly on the floor, and its eyes scanned everyone carefully. Suddenly, with a quick swipe of its tail, a stack of books fell to the ground. Gasps filled the room, and some students jumped back. Jack quickly intervened, guiding Raxor to a corner and explaining, "It's okay. He is curious, not aggressive. He is exploring his space." Mr. Collins reminded the students to stay calm and not panic. Alex helped pick up the fallen books, while Mia reassured a frightened Sophie. Raxor tilted its head, watching the students. It seemed to understand the situation and stayed still. The students began to relax. Liam, still a little wary, said, "I guess he just wants to learn about us. Like we want to learn about him." Jack nodded. "Exactly. He is testing boundaries. But he is smart enough to respect them when you show calmness and patience." The students gradually resumed interaction, rolling balls, offering gentle gestures, and speaking softly. Ethan, who had been quiet, tentatively touched Raxor's scaled shoulder. The creature leaned into the touch, a soft rumble vibrating through the classroom. Alex and Mia led small groups, helping other students understand signals like tail flicks and eye movements. The students realized that each reaction from Raxor was a lesson in understanding communication beyond words. By the end of the day, initial chaos had turned into fascination and bonding. The students learned that even a powerful apex predator could be gentle and responsive if treated with respect and intelligence. They began to see Raxor not just as a creature to fear but as a companion and a living teacher. The classroom had changed. What started as an ordinary day had become an extraordinary experience, teaching the students lessons about courage, responsibility, and the unique capabilities of humans in nurturing even the most formidable creatures. Over the next few days, the students began to bond more with Raxor. Alex and Mia noticed subtle changes in its behavior. The predator seemed to recognize who was approaching and adjusted its movements accordingly. It was clear that Raxor was learning and adapting to them as much as they were learning about it. Sophie discovered that Raxor could fetch objects. She rolled a small ball across the floor, and Raxor nudged it back gently. The students clapped quietly, amazed at its intelligence and precision. Even Liam, who had been skeptical, smiled in awe. Mia noticed that Raxor responded to emotions. When she was nervous, it stayed calm and patient, but when she laughed or showed excitement, it responded with playful gestures. Alex and Jack worked together to guide the students on how to read these signals. They practiced simple commands and gestures, building trust gradually. The students began to see Raxor as more than a pet. It became a companion, a teacher, and a friend. They learned to respect its strength and intelligence. Even Ethan, who had been fearful at first, started approaching Raxor, encouraged by the others. Jack emphasized that patience and observation were key. The students practiced interacting with Raxor without rushing or forcing it. They learned that understanding and respect could turn a fearsome predator into a gentle and intelligent friend. By the end of the week, the classroom had transformed. Raxor moved comfortably among the students, responding to gestures and following instructions. The students felt proud of themselves and grateful to Jack for introducing them to such an extraordinary creature. What had started as fear and uncertainty had become curiosity, understanding, and genuine admiration. The students realized that humans could handle and nurture creatures far beyond ordinary imagination, proving their ingenuity, patience, and courage. One afternoon, while the students were interacting with Raxor, a group of older students from another class entered the room. They were curious but also mischievous, wanting to see the predator react. Liam whispered to Alex, "I hope they don't scare him." Alex nodded, feeling a mix of worry and responsibility. The older students approached Raxor with loud voices and sudden movements. The predator growled softly, eyes narrowing, and its body tensed. Panic started to ripple through the classroom. Mr. Collins quickly stepped in, reminding everyone to stay calm. Jack also raised his hand, signaling the older students to stop. Raxor's response was controlled. It roared once, a deep, commanding sound that made everyone pause, but it did not lunge or attack. The students who had been frightened at first realized that the predator was powerful yet disciplined. Jack explained, "He is showing restraint. He can defend himself, but he chooses not to because you taught him patience and respect." Alex and Mia stepped forward, calmly speaking to Raxor and offering gentle gestures. The predator relaxed, and the tension in the room eased. The older students, seeing the control and bond between the younger students and Raxor, backed away, impressed and cautious. Sophie smiled, realizing the lesson Raxor had taught them. It wasn't just about strength. It was about intelligence, control, and mutual respect. The students had learned that fear could be managed with understanding, and that even a dangerous creature could be trusted when approached with respect. By the end of the encounter, the classroom felt like a safe space again. The students had not only protected Raxor but also defended their own growing knowledge and connection with the predator. They understood that humans could handle extraordinary challenges, showing courage, wisdom, and responsibility. The experience left a lasting impression, proving that extraordinary creatures could be allies when humans approached with respect and intelligence. By the end of the week, the students had fully adapted to having Raxor in the classroom. Alex, Mia, Sophie, Liam, and Ethan all moved with confidence, understanding the predator's signals and responding appropriately. Raxor, once a mysterious and intimidating presence, now felt like a companion and a teacher. The students wrote reports on its behavior, documenting its responses to gestures, its careful interactions, and its intelligence. Mr. Collins praised their observations and reminded them of the lessons learned. Patience, courage, and respect could turn fear into understanding. Even those who had been scared at first, like Ethan, now approached Raxor without hesitation, offering gentle gestures and speaking softly. The predator responded with subtle nods and calm movements, reinforcing the bond of trust that had formed. Alex and Mia reflected on how much they had learned. They realized that humans could handle creatures far beyond ordinary imagination, not just through strength but through intelligence, care, and respect. Raxor had taught them that true power could be gentle and that courage was not the absence of fear but the ability to act wisely despite it. Jack Harris, the human who had introduced Raxor, nodded with satisfaction. The students had not only learned about an extraordinary predator, but had also discovered the remarkable capabilities of humans when they acted with thoughtfulness and responsibility. As the students left the classroom that day, they looked back at Raxor with admiration. They understood now that humans could create bonds with even the most formidable creatures, shaping extraordinary relationships. The classroom, once ordinary and predictable, had become a place of wonder, respect, and discovery, a testament to human ingenuity and the extraordinary potential of trust and care.